Okay.
All right, guys. It is May 16th, 2024 at 6:30 PM. We will call to order the meeting for the Economic Development Corporation 4B meeting. I don't remember. Do we read public comments first or the?
There are.
Yep. All right. Do we have a quorum today? Looks like we do.
Yep.
And we'll go ahead and start with our regular items. So today we will consider approval of April 18th Economic Development Corporation regular meeting minutes. And I don't remember if I just read through them all or if we just do them one at a time. Okay.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
Let's take a vote.
All right.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed? Passed. All right, and the second item is we will consider approval of a professional consulting services agreement between the Town of Trophy Club, Economic Development Corporation, and the John R. McAdams Company, Inc., DBA McAdams, for a small area plan in a not to exceed amount of $89,437 and authorization for the town manager to execute same on behalf of the corporation.
Okay, good evening, board members. We are excited tonight to be able to review with you the proposal that we have for a small area plan. And this is for the 54-acre area that's immediately around the town hall area. You have up on your maps just a general description of that area for it. So this process actually started back in, I believe, in March or April. But we sent out a request for proposals for companies to go ahead and respond to taking a look at this area and helping us to accomplish certain, a layout plan for this area, a different way of looking at it from an economic development perspective, from an infrastructure perspective. But we had some goals as we were doing that, right? We wanted to enhance economic resilience. We wanted to foster service-based employment, improve overall quality of life, promoting sustainability, enhancing pedestrian safety and walkability, facilitating future development, and then addressing the area parking needs that are contained within this zone. So this really presents an opportunity for us to take a look at the town owns 2 vacant lots in this 54-acre area. Those can serve as catalyst projects, opportunities for us to take a look at how it is that we invigorate a little bit of momentum into the development of this area. But that also requires us taking a look at the way things are, the way things we want to, what changes we might want to see in the future, and begin to lay those things out a little bit differently. In that process of responding to the RFP, we had 2 companies respond. The company that we're recommending for your approval this evening is McAdams. McAdams brought an excellent team. I'm going to introduce them and bring them up here in just one second to you. But they're going to go ahead and run through the presentation that they shared with us during the RFP process. That process was reviewed by, we had 3 members of the board. We also had 4 staff members that participated in that process. And unanimously, the recommendation was for this board to approve the contract with them. If the board approves the contract with McAdams, at that point, we move forward to the town council for consideration of that item before it becomes official. And then we would begin working on that over the timeline, and they'll go ahead and run through that. So at this point, I will bring forward the McAdams team so that they can share with you a little bit about themselves and the McAdams firm. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. We're excited to come present our presentation again. But know this is going to be an important project for the town, and we're very excited to be able to help. Go through the agenda tonight: team introductions, experience, approach, project schedule. And to start off, I'm Jamison Pinson. I'm the director of our landscape architecture services here in the DFW Metro. I've been with the company about 13 years and really have a passion for placemaking and getting into the design of the details, and really have an appreciation and getting to see people use places that we're able to create.
Well, good evening. My name is Randy Rivera. I'm a planning director for McAdams. Been there for 17 or 18 years. It goes by really fast, but been a resident of North Texas my whole life, and just seeing it change and being a part of that has been such a tremendous blessing. And been doing the entitlements and planning in a lot of the communities here in North Texas. And my favorite part about that is the getting folks to work together, creative problem solving. How can we work to find a solution that makes everybody feel like they walked away with something that they didn't have previously. So we're very excited to be here. And this is the same presentation we did give the committee, and we'll go through that again. But we would welcome y'all to ask questions at any time.
And I'm Jason Clunch. We'll be serving as the market analysis lead. It's good to be back in Trophy Club. We've been involved in a lot of projects here, actually, over the years. We love your staff. We love your new staff. So that's a very comfortable relationship. And I truly love this team. The work that McAdam's does and that we've done together is just phenomenal. Both of us believe in activation. And so having a market support, I know, is important to you. But we believe in the small details. We believe in placemaking and some of the sustainability as much as they will. So I think this will be a fun process, hopefully, if y'all choose to move forward, and we look forward to helping you add value to this process.
So just a little bit about McAdams. Been around since 1979. We're headquartered in North Carolina. A little over 450 employees now. Multidisciplinary firm, and we can handle most everything outside the building as far as land development is concerned, other than structural and geotech. So we have a wide range of expertise on the team available to us. But we're no stranger to the DFW Metro. We've been here since 1991. Von Bucher established G&A Consultants. And in 2018, we were acquired by McAdams, and it's been a great merger. It's really allowed us to grow. We've got 2 offices, one in Roanoke and one in Louisville, and we've been able to grow our employee base up to 72 here in the Metro.
And so, look, like McAdams, we've been around for quite a while. We launched our firm in 2010 after being in-house with Billingsley, and prior to that, we did a ton of private development work with a number of parties throughout Dallas and Tarrant County. In addition to market analysis work, we also are involved in a number of planning projects. And as you can see throughout our experience, we work in a number of places. So we've done a lot of corridor work. We worked in pretty much every corridor in Dallas-Fort Worth. And we love when communities are proactive and think through this stuff, because it does matter. And you've got, a limited amount of real estate along the frontage to really craft your identity. And obviously you can see that there's some things that probably occurred back in the day that would want to rethink, and that's hard to do, but we do have an opportunity to sort of rethink some of the greenfield sites, and hopefully if the numbers make sense, we can help you rethink some of the built environment as well. And we've already been scheming on some of the infrastructure changes and some placemaking that we could do already, and so I think that this team's going to deliver a lot of great ideas to help hopefully exceed your expectations.
So real quick, how is Catalyst related to McAdams? Is it?
We'll be a sub in this process, but we work together a lot. So maybe kissing cousins.
Not in Texas.
Yeah, really.
Maybe Kentucky or something.
Yes, we've been working with Catalyst for almost a decade or more now at this point, and they are Jason's our #1 pick of using his team with the quality work that they do on anything economic related, market related, because with entitlements and other small area plans, corridor plans, that's really what a lot of cities need, that information, and Jason's very much in tune to those. So we wanted to touch briefly on some experience, and I might keep this at a very high level, and then we can dive deep and into anything if you would like to. One of the communities here, Highland Village, that we've done something very, very similar. They're very similar to Trophy Club with size. They also have some highway frontage. They're directly adjacent to the lake. But there were a lot of similarities. These tracks that you see in yellow, those are the remaining areas of the city of Highland Village that have not been developed, and they were facing build out. 95% of the community was already built out. And so they did a fiscal analysis of what the position that the city was in currently, and their current tax base and the property tax was contributing to over 80% of that revenue. And they wanted to help balance that out to be more 25% commercial property tax, or commercial tax, and then 75% ad valorem. And so they wanted to pay particular attention to these areas that you see in yellow. So we work very closely with Catalyst on this project too. It was a multi-pronged comprehensive plan update. One of the components was this small area plan for these opportunity areas. It included some pretty extensive public engagement. We believed one open house. When it came down to it, we needed to do two. The feedback was continuing throughout that process. So it extended it a little bit longer, but it was about a year altogether. And so we got extensive public engagement. We did a survey, and there was a website, and then an open house and several work sessions with other stakeholders. We also met with the property owners of these pieces. And so the outcome of that was recommendations on what's important to these areas as it builds out, and how do those match up to the values, the quality of life that Highland Village residents expect to see, while balancing and trying to have some fiscal stewardship of these remaining pieces that are so important on what happens here. And fortunately, we were seeing that starting to come to fruition with some proposals that are not very traditional suburban, or sorry, not residential. They're commercial opportunities. So it's really encouraged the development community to take a closer look at these pieces, knowing that Highland Village was receptive to some land use changes. And then,
So this is the canals at Mansfield, and the city of Mansfield approached us. They had a strategic piece of land, much like you guys have, that they knew that they could do something pretty dramatic with and kind of change some of the characteristics of their community. It was a pretty high-profile project, and they really had this idea of trying to welcome people from Dallas and Fort Worth to come down to their new character district or town center that they wanted to create and come spend those $20 bills in their community. So it had a lot of economic drivers around this project. But we were able to kind of work with the city there, listen to their vision and their goals for this, and kind of leading with the design, come up with a plan that was able to meet those. So this is a couple of the visioning documents and some of the illustrations that we provided there. The illustrations are a pretty important part of the process that we like to go through, as it lets us make more informed design decisions and really let the whole team really visualize and see what it's going to look like long before dirt ever gets turned. This process working, I'll kind of go through a little bit more of the process later on in the deck, but this took a little bit over 6 months to get through this process of the master planning phase, and then it did allow them to work with the developer with a piece of property, and they're able to secure 9 acres, which is going to be the new home to their city hall. These are a couple other projects. Here on the left is Flower Mound, and it's called the Riverwalk in Flower Mound. The top right is Bedford Commons. These are 2 bedroom communities that's really grown overnight. A lot of auto-centric retail kind of developing along the major corridors following the residential development. Both of these projects had their own set of encumbrances, one of those being the floodway, but we were able to kind of redefine those situations and make them amenities in both scenarios. And bottom right, one that I'm sure y'all are aware of, next door, Roanoke City Center. This served as the new location for the City Hall, be the terminus of Oak Street, and provided some more room for the expansion of that dining scene and the retail scene from Oak Street to kind of come further south, and then also kind of served as a catalyst to get some more residential density in there that was pretty essential for the long-term vibrancy of Oak Street.
And I want to go back real quick. I think what's really impressive about this project, if you were there, day zero with the stakeholders and the developers, I think, ultimately the lowest common denominator in the low hanging fruit here was to, sort of strip this out. So the developers had a traditional retail palette. They were going to add some multifamily and a mix of housing. And I think what McAdams and our team worked with the city to come up with something extraordinary and push the limits and to raise the game and raise the level of thinking and actually help the developers reduce risk by doing the right thing, I think is really extraordinary. And I pulled Jameson aside, and it's really hard to see at this scale, but the level of details and the intricacies and the quality of the design that McAdams pulled off was really amazing. Some of the best work we've seen when you start drilling into the details and look at the pockets, the walkable streets, the wooners, and the water features, and how everything sort of naturally interfaces. Obviously, you're dealing with a little bit different scale here than there. It'd be fun to put all the stuff along the frontage, but we may not be able to achieve all that. But again, I think if you were able to go through the before and afters and look at the sequence and the amount of thinking, the work, and the effort to really sort of drive the ship and provide thought leadership to elevate ultimately the end product is amazing. And today, I think the residents are excited about this project. It's gotten a lot of accolades, but what we're pleased with is the developers just is excited, and so are the end users, which will ultimately be a lot better than where they started. And so anyway, this is the level of thinking, and I think is important, and the stuff that you're after is the details and the sustainability and creating a virtuous cycle along some of the development so that you can essentially maximize your economic opportunity. These are just a few of our projects we're involved in, and I think you guys are familiar with the 360 corridor, but if you've been to any of the chicken and pickles, we were involved in some of the economic structure of this and a lot of the end users. This is another project on the I-35 corridor that actually McAdams was involved with early on in the framework up in Louisville that I was actually on a call with a user today. We're really, really pleased about the quality and the development and setting up this as a gateway. This site was originally going to be an industrial park that Prologis had along their frontage. And so to turn this into a walkable district and sort of a nexus of and a northern gateway for the city being on their frontage is, I think, very important. I know those are some of the things that you're thinking about is sort of how to elevate your brand using these frontage pieces as an opportunity. And the other one is just a walkable district, very complicated project, multiple ownership and acquisitions and title issues, but we were also able to turn that into a walkable district in a TOD station in Farmers Branch, which they yearned and really needed a site to create a sense of place for the residents. And this has helped expand the stars and a lot of corporate tenants now that they have more of those public amenities to go to. So I'll turn it back over to the team to talk through some of the approach. Actually, I'll start with approach. When I told you early on that we also believe in the details that I think from a planning perspective that McAdams and also you'll believe in, but one of the things that we think is important that your core values get integrated into this process. And so we've already been, reading and thinking about what's important to you and how to integrate some of the things in your strategic plan that you guys have spent time and hours putting together with already public input to sort of weave that into the process. For us, when, you've got a user decision to make and you're arguing about does it fit your core values enough, for us, sometimes that's success because we know that there's a unified vision, there's a unified vocabulary you're using. And so we've already started kind of gathering and ground truthing kind of our process and plan, but it's all based on some of the core values that you've already established. And I think that's important to know that this is really the roots of where our work begins to make sure that we're aligned with the thinking and what's important to you before we go off on the design journey, making stuff up that it's not appropriate. So.
Yeah, and speaking of those core values, those help give boundaries to this approach and this process that we're going to go through if you were to select us, that decisions that are made from stakeholders, from us, from anyone else needs to be aligned with those values. And so I think that's, like Jason said, it's a great launching off point of we know what's important to Trophy Club. So the project phases are in these 5 different categories, and we're going to go through each one of those at a high level also. But this explore phase, yes, sir.
Exhibit A is referred to in the agreement in the PSA quite a number of times, right? And I presume that the financial is based on Exhibit A, correct?
If I remember correctly, yes.
It's a scope of work.
Which is a scope of work, exactly.
Yes.
It's got the-
I just want to make sure that what you're going to present is the actual scope of work that we've,
Yeah.
Yes.
we're referring to in the.
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Want to make sure we're talking the same language.
Yes. We broke up the deliverables per each of these 5 phases, and then our scope matches that.
Thank you.
So launching off here in the explore phase, clarifying scope, that's kind of what we're already doing a little bit, but doing the site visit, meeting with staff, meeting with the property owners, the business owners within the 54-acre area, and then agreeing to how do we want to communicate, what's our meeting frequency, what is our plan for community outreach, what has worked previously, maybe with a strategic plan or other efforts that the community has done, what has been successful for Trophy Club, and what would be preferred way to reach out to community stakeholders to come in for an open house or another type of meeting or venue, or there's a special event that we can have a booth and we're there asking for input. So agreeing to those strategies early on so we can prepare, because each of these steps, the explore, evaluate, envision, and act and execute, they're really building on the one before them, and they're informing the subsequent steps after them. And so it's very iterative and incremental, and it goes through each of those steps. And so agreeing to how we're going to approach community engagement is very important early on. So we would do that during the explore phase as well. And then evaluate is looking at the data closer. And we've already kind of done a preliminary assessment of the 54 acres, which you see in the red outline, identifying some key features. Those are the blue dots with the numbers, and how this area could be changing with the highway improvements. What are some encumbrances like drainage and overhead lines? Where there's an opportunity for sidewalks and they've missed it? Or, what are some other things that we need to pay attention to, some constraints and opportunities for each of these pieces for all of the 54 acres. And it's also, I think, during this phase that we would launch the market study with Jason.
And so ultimately, as part of that process, we'll be also working on a fiscal analysis of the outcomes. And so there likely won't be one scenario. We'll work with McAdams on several options for these properties, and then we can help you sort of evaluate the outcome based on a fiscal tool. And we'll look at other factors as we get through the process and understand what are your success factors. We can sort of run those scenarios and test each of the scenarios against those success factors, because there'll be some scenarios that may be more aggressive and higher density, but you'll have to sacrifice something, or one may be more walkable. And so once we identify your success factors, including the fiscal output from the city standpoint, we can help you understand capacity and build out and timing and all that stuff, which I think is helpful for a decision-making process. Yeah. And so one of the things I love about these processes is I love public engagement. In a perfect project, we could have 100% of the residents participate in this project. And for us, the benefit of the public engagement is to find out new ideas or new approaches or things that, places that they've been that they think is appropriate here. But ultimately, we'd love to have everybody's sort of fingerprint on this process. And so, and that's the challenging thing, sort of, if you had an unlimited budget, you could, public engagement is probably one of those that you would probably expand the most, and it creates the most flexibility and extends the timeline on these processes so much because different people engage in different ways. But for us, we look forward to partnering with McAdams, and we've got a ton of experience working with them and other firms, and what we would consider traditional approaches, surveys and workshops, and even non-traditionals. There's certainly ways online. I know there's a lot of people here commute, and their schedule may be different. So if we can catch people at events or festivals or places that they're already going to be and be available to integrate ideas from them into the planning process, for us that's nirvana. So.
So working through that engagement process, there's going to be a lot of data collection that's happening, and it's a lot to decipher through. So we're actively listening. We're trying to find the common points, but taking all that input and kind of funneling it through and seeing if we can get a summary of what all that is. And a lot of that's going to come out in project goals and programming, and that's going to allow us to really translate all that we've heard and get it into a form that we can really translate and get onto paper for a plan that we can execute for you. So again, coming back to the canals at Mansfield, I was just using this project. This is a great example of how the input was continuous through the process. We had a lot of feedback, and how the plan really morphed through all the conversations to meet everyone's goals there. So the top couple of examples were some of the first concepts that we provided to the city, and they took a liking to the radial concept, and then we started working down that route, and then we started getting more and more engagement from the developer side and their expertise on knowing what the market was driving, and gave us some insights that we could refine our plan. And so as a continuous refinement, a lot of it was on the go during the meetings, and we would mark it up and say, okay, we've got it. We'll send you another version back in the following week. And we continually refined that until we were able to find that happy medium that met the town's vision and their goals, as well as something that the developer was going to be happy with, and they knew that would do well in the market. And then this was kind of the final adoption of the plan that we talked about earlier. And down in the southeast corner, that's going to be the new home of the Mansfield City Hall. And then the river-centric entertainment district, it'll have a river canal with the entertainment district there at the end of the green alley. And they even want to do river boats and things to have rides around there. So it's a pretty exciting development, but things are moving on it now. It's pretty cool.
All right, so we're at the final stage of execute. And so through this process, we've come up with the plan, working together with stakeholders. And then we've got a final document. And now what's the really important part of that document is implementation. And this is to guide and help set up some action steps for the community to achieve goals over a period of time of recommendations that came out of this process that we did from the feedback that we received, and input from community as well as council and other stakeholders. And so here's an example of a matrix, an implementation matrix of what those recommendations might be, or how it's kind of structured and who's responsible, when should it be done, and what the action type is. So it'd be something very similar to this. Just helping set up Trophy Club for success as the planning process has ended. Now the execution and implementation has begun. And so how can we help continue Trophy Club to be successful in making sure that this plan comes to life in the way that we've agreed to throughout the process? And then project schedule, we put together a preliminary schedule based on all the different phases that we just talked about. So here it's all on one slide. I think it makes it very easy to see everything kind of condensed right there. But explore, again, we believe, might take that whole 12, maybe it's 10, or maybe it's 8. But it's, when we have this kickoff meeting with staff and we agree to kind of the cadence of the meetings that we'll have with them, and then the ongoing community engagement, because that could draw it out or it could condense it depending on how we approach the outreach process. And then getting started with stakeholder feedback right away with interviews with property owners and business owners. And then we need to have a constraints map prepared ahead of that so we can talk knowledge about the area when we meet with the property owners and business owners. And while we're doing that, Jason and Catalyst will be doing the market study. We believe it could take that time period to complete. And once we have the constraints map, we have feedback from initial interviews, and we have the market study data, we feel like that'll give us a good amount of information to have a well-informed community engagement meeting, workshop, open house, or booth, or whatever that ends up looking like, to where we can put the data out there for folks to see. One of the things that we did for Highland Village that we thought was helpful is, where does your tax money, how is it spent by the city, and how that is broken up. And Highland Village did a good job of setting the stage of what is the concern, really, of how we build out. We're facing this issue where our revenue isn't matching our services, our expenses, and it's sort of dipping down. We need to be creative. So community, residents, we need your help here. Please give us some input on what you think would be appropriate. And part of that was also Jason's fiscal analysis of each of those areas, looking at it if you did traditional, 50-foot or 10,000 square foot lots versus a mixed-use type of setting. We're looking at the tax revenue over a certain period of time, and it's informing the residents that are coming to these open house meetings of, this is just a tough decision. We understand you may not like this type of density, but you can continue to have community services because of this, and it puts the city in a good, more fiscal position, and we're all responsible for that as residents. And so all that collected together in that setting really helped get us started off on the right point of, this is what we're facing today, and this is why we need input from the community. And then once we have the input from the open house meeting, or whichever type of community engagement that is, then we'll draft some scenarios. And like Jameson is showing, that the evolution of the canals is a really good example of, here's a more grid-like traditional pattern, and here's something that's very different. What are the pros and cons of each of those? And we had to weigh those with the stakeholders in Mansfield. We would do the same thing here with two scenarios that we create as a result of the input received from the community. Have a workshop with council or whichever board we feel is necessary. We talk about that with staff during the kickoff meeting, and then go back, refine that plan, continue to work on the draft document, and then present the concept and that to the council or P&Z or whichever board we feel is necessary that we need to at that next step. And then after that would be adoption, and then implementation. And so I think, Jameson, you're closing this one out. Sorry. I didn't want to overspeak.
It's just closing slide. Why McAdams? We're focused on serving the community. We've been doing a lot of work here in the North DFW Metro for a while now. And we recently were awarded the pickleball courts, so we're doing some work with y'all, and during that presentation it was fun to show that a lot of our employees live right here in the area, and we also do kickball on the park field. So now we're able to work on some of the park projects that we actually use as a community. And another thing is, we're fueled by innovative solutions. We like to think outside of the box to try to make people successful, committed to design excellence, kind of leading with that design to find those different creative solutions, and then tuned to market dynamics.
One thing I wanted to add, Jameson, thank you for bringing that up. The community engagement, there's a component of that included in the pickleball process, and we feel like it might be very efficient if we were to combine that effort to try to get maximum participation and incentivize folks to come out. They may not be interested in the small area plan, but they sure are interested in pickleball, and so we can try to get as much input. We feel like that would be a benefit to combine those efforts if possible. So I think we'll be happy to stand for any questions.
I think I have one, if I can go. So I was interested in hearing about the interaction between kind of like the end of McAdams project kind of developing and then like the developers, like how does, because it looks like a 1-year timeline for McAdams, but then, you know, like a development timeline, like how do we bridge that gap between the design and like the actual like build out, you know, and who is involved in that? Is that, you know, like, I don't know if you get where I'm going with that, but.
So part of our secret sauce, if there are interested parties, or we can think about some parties that would be, you know, good to test, you know, maybe some scenarios that align with some work that they've done. You know, we call it user testing, but it's a great way to get out to the market and get some feedback, and hopefully solicit you know, interest from a project that aligns with a developer that, you know, maybe have done some work somewhere else that we may have a relationship with. And so part of this may actually jumpstart that effort. In terms of Catalyst, we've got a long history of sort of helping with implementation. And so understanding the market, understanding sort of the details and design, and then being able to come back, you know, possibly with McAdams, which we did in Roanoke and worked on the private side, where McAdams was intimately involved in the engineering, and we were helping with the activation. I think was a really good partnership. And so we have that ability. Obviously, this is sort of a finite scope, back to the Exhibit A, but we can certainly add value way beyond sort of this contract if there's interest from the town and there's development interest, and we know there will be, so.
Okay. Yeah, I guess to follow up on that, I was kind of thinking along the lines of, you know, is there a scenario where we put together a design and developers aren't interested, or they're not, you know, they don't want to build it out kind of the way it's designed, or, you know, is there like, is there some interaction between the developers and the design process? Like, hey, this is how we could actually.
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly test that to some degree with the limited scope. And again, that gets into the public engagement, you know, how many developers do we have to interview and how long does that take? But I think the key, and I think that's one of the reasons why we enjoy working with McAdams, is you got to create a design that's sort of flexible for market dynamics. And we're not going to come up with anything that hasn't been tested or that there's not demand for. So, I mean, I think the fact that, you know, we'd come up with something that's so audacious that's not, you know, constructible or you know, financeable, I think would be very, very unlikely. So.
Okay, thanks.
I mean, this is not the best market timing with interest rates. So, I mean, there's, you know, there's hurdles. We work with a number of communities where they know that, you know, the market interest today is the lowest common denominator, and they're willing to sort of wait out the market to get something that's more elevated. And I could see that playing out. But we could, you know, we could certainly develop something that would be market sensitive and I think would meet your expectations for sure.
Okay, one more and then I'm done. So this potential project, kind of looking at the acreage and the challenges with what we have here, like what would you say is like the complexity of the project compared to other kind of, you know, if it's just a wide open, you know, 50 acres or, you know,
Now I messed it up.
what do you think about the size and like, what's your opinion of the project compared to other projects personally?
You know, it's small, so it's recorded.
Yeah.
So I think,
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
You read my mind. I was trying to get there. So I think, I mean, McAdams could step into, but I mean, obviously, you know, physically, you know, the site is very small. You know, a lot of the study areas is part of the built environment. You know, rethinking, you know, and some of it's a time horizon, but rethinking that on a 20 or 30 or 50-year horizon, some of that stuff may not be there anymore. And so some of this is, you know, what's the realistic time horizon, and can you, you know, exhaust some of this out, or some of it's obviously going to stay. And, but there's a lot of complexities in this. I mean, there's infrastructure and small tracks, and they're, you know, divided up, and there's existing things that create context. TxDOT itself, the frontage road and access management and all the things that get involved. But anyway, you can.
Yeah, and I would like to speak to some of that too. I'm so grateful, I think all of us are, about TxDOT switching the location of on and off ramps to help draw more traffic along the service road. I know they're doing up and down 114 and other highways.
Except for the timeline that they're proposing to
Yeah.
open the Solana
Yeah.
exit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think February is the current.
Yeah, we pulled the latest schematic from 2020, and they've missed some of those time. But
Yeah.
TxDOT does that, you know. But they're making progress, so we'll
Yeah.
count our blessings. But I think one of the Jason talks about the infrastructure, and Jameson is very gifted at going into the detail of a design and what makes a great place, and capitalizing on its opportunities given the features of the property. And how Trophywood Drive bisects the east and the west, basically. And it's, today we saw some people riding a motorized bike and a lady walking a dog, and love seeing that activity out there. That is great, but how do we get more of it? And can we draw people more from the community and have that pedestrian connection down from into the neighborhood to come out here? And then how do we slow folks down when they're not necessarily traveling too fast, because I know there's a stop sign, but how do we get them to where they're looking around at what's around them and they're slowing down, maybe with enhanced pavement or some sort of treatment there, and maybe realigning some of Trophywood around a square or some civic opening or some sort of gathering spot to create this node of bringing the entire small area plan together in one kind of central location to connect the restaurants, because they're not necessarily connected because of Trophywood. And then we're aware of some of the other constraints and challenges of the property too, and looking forward to talking with the restaurant owners and some of the other owners. I know the city is an owner as well, but the parking, and how do we solve for that? And then the power lines and that water tower too. So you were going to add something, Jason?
No, but I also want to sort of emphasize that you've got, property that EDC owns, which is a huge advantage. I think it creates a lot of flexibility, certainly when there's, market headwinds, and the fact that some of these properties are greenfield. We worked in areas much more complicated than this, where it was 100% built environment. And so I think, with the frontage and the visibility, the new access, I think there's a lot of opportunities here as well. So.
Any other questions?
I have no.
Go motion to approve.
Let me read it. I make a motion to approve a professional consulting services agreement between the Town of Trophy Clubs, Economic Development Corporation, and the McAdams Company for a small area plan not to exceed amount of $89,437 and authorization for the town manager to execute same on behalf of the corporation.
I'll second it. Ready to vote?
Joe, did you see Exhibit A, or did you need to see that, or
I'm hoping Exhibit A was just explained to us.
the schedule? And
That
then,
was the basis for my question before.
so I guess the 89,000, that's payable over 12 months, like equally per month, or I couldn't get that. No.
No.
Okay, here we go. And maybe this was in the previous presentation, so I apologize. But
Well, we had this in the appendix, but this lists each deliverable according to that approach that we just went over. And that does total to 76, but if you look down below at the additional services, there's the fiscal impact analysis at 7,500, and we would bring that up into the bulk of the deliverables as that gets us to that 86 number. But what you see here on this list of deliverables is what's in Exhibit A, but it's our contract of services written on our McAdams standard proposal or contract for our accounting purposes, but it matches these numbers.
So this PSA is your document?
No, sir, the PSA itself is the city's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Our legal team has created the professional services agreement. As an attachment to that, you have the RFP response from McAdams, as well as the fee schedule. So all of the things that were in the response become an appendix to the agreement itself and the obligations of the parties.
I've got to ask you this. So you've got 76.9K, right? And you said that we add in the fiscal impact analysis, which I think is important.
Mm-hmm.
There's 3,000 and change. Is there something else included in there that, from the lower additional services, that brings it up to 89K?
I do not believe so. I thought it was just the fiscal impact, adding that up there.
So, and as a note, and I can't remember if there were some ancillary things that we saw that we might want to add in. It's just knowing that there might be some additional fees that are added in. This is, you're approving at this point a contract not to exceed, right? Does not mean that ultimately the contract value will go that high, if that makes sense. So if we only approve, for example, if we only do $79,950 for the scope of services in front of you, that's what we would get, right? We would pay that amount. We have added to it. We know that we want to do the fiscal impact analysis on that part, and that's why that number, we have included that in that cost because we know we wanted to make sure to include that part.
So, I mean, there's always scope creep.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just curious before we vote on this, what's included? And I understand not to exceed, but is the fiscal impact analysis the only thing that's added to the 76K?
That's correct.
Okay, and then you put a percentage in there in the event of?
Just in case.
Sure, okay.
Then 2.3 outlines like additional services that may be requested beyond which are below or additionally.
That's scope creep.
Yeah. Okay.
Our attorney wrote this.
The professional services agreement.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
good. We ready to vote?
Second the motion to vote. Everybody,
You have a first and second at this point, so yeah.
Yeah, we have a first and second.
okay. Everybody for?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed? No opposed? It is passed.
So very
Good.
much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for coming out this evening.
Do we need to go into executive session or are we going to adjourn?
Yeah, we don't.
Perfect. That, the time is 7:16 and we will adjourn the meeting.